name is David Yates. I'm in the Southern region representing the TE&T committee, and Kelly McGowan is from the North Central region, and she'll be hopping on here and taking over the other half of our presentation today. As we come in and we think about using Zoom, we think that a lot of us are all pros at it, but there's still a lot of tips and tricks that we can learn. In preparing for this session, there was a lot of things that I picked up on too. We'll be sharing those today. I've been using Zoom since 2014, about the middle of the year. That's when our Institute of Agriculture adopted the platform for distance and video meetings. Since COVID, everything has changed in the way that we work, and Zoom has been a staple for our state and many others across the nation. Today, I'll be discussing some tips that are available in your Zoom Pro account. In Tennessee, our Zoom platform is managed by the University of Tennessee Knoxville campus. So in each state, you'll need to check your account and your institution for some of the specifics about your settings and some of the options you have. Some of these are managed at the institute top level, and some of them are things that you and I can go in and change and do. Zoom has matured and changed a lot over time, and it's going to continue to change. Some of the specifics that we discuss today may not be exactly the same in 6 months from now. So just keep that in mind and be sure and watch for those updates and security enhancements as they come along within Zoom. We're going to have the Q&A open within today's meeting, and if you have questions as we come along, feel free to put those in that Q&A box, and we're going to come at the end after Kelly and I both do our presentation, and we'll look at those questions and answer those there at the end. So let's look at some of the technical things about Zoom, and I'm going to start with 8 tips that I'm going to share with you that I hope that you can come in and use to help improve your Zoom meetings. So our first tip looking at, and this is one that I guess I wasn't 100% sure about at first of how useful it would be, but having done it a few times, it's really come in really handy. And that's coming in and creating an alternative host. And as you are the creator of the meeting, you can come in and you can create these alternative hosts. It can save you time when you start a meeting and you're trying to find certain participants, to promote those to the host or to the co-host. If you come in and put them as an alternative host, they'll already be at that level. Also, what if for some reason that you're not able to host a meeting, or there's some kind of technical problem on your end and you were the host, you were the creator of the meeting? Coming in and having someone as that alternative host would let them come in as that host role and start the meeting and get it going, even if you weren't able to. I look at this as one of the great features to have as a backup, just in case you're doing a really big, important meeting. And what if you get sick? Again, different circumstances like this. So when you come in and you schedule a new Zoom meeting, things within Zoom are going to be different, whether you're using the app or whether you're using the web version. And some things are only available in the web version. This is a function that's available in both. If you're using the app or the program on your computer, you're going to set up that new meeting and then scroll all the way down to the bottom of the screen. Click on that advanced options, and then you'll see the ability to add in alternative host. If you're in the web version, again, scroll down to the bottom of the screen and you'll see alternative host listed there. So when you put in your alternative host, you'll put in their email, and you can put in multiples, separate that with a semicolon. Now, the thing to note here is that typically you can only add a person from your university domain. So as I'm in Tennessee, I can add other Tennessee users of Zoom on our domain, but I can't add someone from out of state or who's not part of our university. So that's your drawback that you have there. But adding those multiple people from within your university, you're really good to go. The next step looking at is being able to turn on live transcripts during the meeting. This is a really new feature that got added to Zoom. And when we look at it, I think this is probably one of the things that we need to think about, making sure that we have turned on as we're presenting meetings, not just to internally within Extension, but to our clients. Think of this just as closed captioning that you see on television shows. So when you come in, it is automatic once you turn it on. It will learn as you speak. So the more that you use it, the more accurate it will be. Now, you come in and you configure this on your own Zoom account, and then the host of the meeting can turn this on or off for any meeting that he or she has set up. So in order to do this, you're going to log into your Zoom account via the web portal that you have. And when you come in, you're going to look over on the left side of the screen and go down to your settings. And you're going to select settings, and then you want to scroll down to the in meeting advanced section. So you'll be scrolling down that page at least halfway down or so. When you find this closed captioning, there's going to be a slider box, and you'll need to toggle that to on. Then you need to mark the checkbox to enable live transcription service. So you'll need to make both of those changes and click save. If it does prompt you, go ahead and enable the closed captioning, and you're ready to go. So you would do this one time for your account. Then when you come in and you're ready to do your meeting, you're hosting the meeting, you're going to look at the bottom of your screen where your icons are and look for the live transcript button. When you see that, you'll click on it, and I've got the box captured here, and you're just going to click down at the bottom, enable the auto transcription to begin. Again, this can be turned on and off at any time during your meeting, and that transcript will become part of the video recording. So those transcripts that you see in the meeting are captured within the live video that's being recorded. To me, when we're thinking about making sure that we're reaching all of our clients, this is a really awesome feature to have. Even if you don't need it, there's a background noise or something, and maybe you didn't catch all of the words, you'll be able to see it written in real time as the people are speaking. So a great feature that we have here. Next, I want to talk about recording Zoom meetings. And many of us do this on a regular basis, but we have a couple of options. And again, this newer option of the cloud recording comes in too. And to think about what you're going to do with it. Well, originally, we could record locally to our host computer hard drive, and this is a function of a host or a co-host. And you are saving the file locally on your machine. And then the problem is when you need to share that file, how do you do it? Well, do you load it on a file server? These are files typically too large. You're not going to be able to just attach them to an email. So you're going to have some way to get that from person to person. Now, most commonly, what most of us would do is come and upload that onto YouTube. Now, uploading these videos onto YouTube is a great thing to do because we can track the number of people that are viewing it. And it can give us some of that demographic data from YouTube. But we have this new option of recording to the cloud. And you can do the same thing with from the recording locally to the cloud, except it's going to store it into the Zoom cloud. Now, that file, after it processes, can then be downloaded locally onto your machine or some other type of machine, and then you could flip it back around and send it back to YouTube. That still works. But one thing about using it within the cloud is that we can also share that video file of Zoom either as a public or internally to specific people. We can also come in and use expiration dates with this. So if you had a meeting and you would say, okay, it would be available for 1 week. Now you can do the same thing in YouTube as far as making that video public, private, or removing it, that type of thing. But we can set this up and do it within Zoom and take that part out of it. In your settings, you can also allow a person to download that video from the Zoom feature from seeing it in the cloud and also see those transcripts. And again, this is a function that the host or the co-host can do as far as turning on the recording, and whoever turns and starts the recording, that's whose account it's going to, or that's whose local computer it's going to be saved back down to. So if we look at our settings to come in and do the recording, you can go within the app and click your name in that upper right corner and come down and grab your settings, click on that. And then in your settings section, click on the recordings area. And with it, you're going to be able to see where one is Zoom going to store that recording if we do it locally. And you can change the location of where that might be. And it also will give you how much space that you have left. You have some different options that you can come in and turn on. Again, these are default options that I have for my screen that doing this screenshot, but I can turn each of these on or off. If you're doing it from within the web version, it's very similar. You're going to need to log in, go to your settings, and then come down, look at recording, and you'll see a similar type of options that you have to come in and use. Typically, your web settings, going through it that way, you'll have a few more options versus just using the app only. And most of us are probably very familiar with this, but as the host or the co-host to come in and record the meeting, we're going to look for that record icon. Typically, it's going to be at the bottom of the screen. And then you would select your choice of whether you want to put this on your computer or the cloud. I will say that if you're recording locally, you want to make sure that you've got plenty of hard disk space. If you're right at the epicus of being full on your hard drive, it may not be such a good thing to do that. If you're recording to the cloud, you need to ensure that you've got some pretty decent bandwidth. If your internet's on a spotty side, recording to the cloud isn't going to be your best option more than likely, because it is using that to go up to it. So those are some things just to keep in mind as far as picking which one is the best for you. Now, I want to look at talking about sharing those cloud recordings. Something that you maybe haven't looked at before, but if you do share it to the cloud, you do have to log into your Zoom account via the web. Over on the left side, again, go over and click on your recordings, and it's going to list all of the recordings that you have. And you can switch between what's done locally and what's done in the cloud. If we're looking at our cloud recordings, if we come in, look at the recording that you would like to share, and then select the share button that corresponds to that recording. So again, they're going to be in a list horizontally, and you'll click the share for the particular one. Now you're going to see that each of these recordings are going to have some different options that we can pick on about how we want to share it. And we can either do this, one, turn the sharing on or off. Second, how do we want to share it? Is it publicly available, or is it only for authenticated users can view it? Do we want to put an expiration date to it? Do we want to let viewers to be able to download it or only view it? So it gives you some protection there. If you have done the registration process for your meeting, you can have the recording be available on demand. Again, option to turn on and off. You can put passcode information on there too to protect it with that. So a lot of options that you have with being able to share it in the cloud. And this really comes in, you're wanting to share it either publicly or with a select group of people, and you've got the options to be able to do that. So the recording, there's a lot more that we can add to it than maybe what we've been used to doing. The next topic is the one I think of us as extension professionals probably grit our teeth at quite a bit. And it's like, well, how do we share a video within a Zoom meeting? And there's a lot of ways that you could do this. And there's a lot of if and ands that go along with this. There's not just one foolproof way to do this, but I'm going to share with you the way that I and my coworkers have been doing this, and we're having a little bit more success with it. Embedding a video within PowerPoint is usually where the problem begins with. And we would typically do that a lot of times. If we were doing a live meeting, we can make that work. But within Zoom, that typically doesn't work very well. The other option that other thing we need to consider about sharing these videos is bandwidth. And it's the bandwidth that you, the host, is having, whether that's in your office or your home. How much bandwidth do you have? And then also think about the participants. You know, Zoom works in various different ways and will compensate itself so much within providing things. It can sort of speed up and slow down to catch up, if there's those lags in the bandwidth. But if both of you have sort of so-so bandwidth internet connection, probably the video is not going to play so well. The best solution that I have come up with and have used with myself and my coworkers is have that video queued up and ready to play in some other program on your computer. Now, we use the Vlc Media Player. It's a free open source multimedia player that you can use. Again, every university would probably have something a little bit different to use. That's just what we have been using since Windows 10 made some changes in their media player. This was sort of an alternative that we could go to, and it easily plays all of our videos. So when we have that video queued up, ready to go, in our VLC Media Player for our example, we would come in and we're just trucking along within Zoom, and we may be using a PowerPoint right now. So what you would want to do is, if you were already sharing your screen, you're going to need to stop sharing, and then you're going to click on the share screen icon again. And that's when we're going to make a couple of changes to what we're doing. So we have that video already queued up. So when we come into our share screen within Zoom, we're going to make sure that we have the advanced tab clicked. There's a basic and advanced. We want to use advanced. Then we're going to select that multimedia player program, whatever that you're using. In my case, it's the VLC Media Player. I'm going to have it already queued up and ready to go. And the two critical things is that you want to have both of the boxes checked at the bottom of the screen. The one that says share sound and optimize for video clip. These are two important things that you're telling Zoom to take care of for you, is that yes, you're going to be sharing sound through Zoom. And secondly, you want to optimize that video clip based on the internet connection that you, the host, have, and that those of the participants have. You've got those two things checked, the video program selected, then go and click on that share button, and we cross our fingers, and then you should see full screen the multimedia player program, whichever one that you've picked. And then you could click your play button to start the video. And then when you're done, click stop or pause, and then stop your screen share. And then you could go back within PowerPoint. Taking the video out of PowerPoint seems to be a big key to this, of getting it to play. But even sometimes with the best circumstances, video clips don't translate as well into Zoom. So if we can come to a different way of not using those live within the meeting, it may be that we provide a link, could use a tiny URL to do that, and could tell participants, we'll go in and check out the full video after the meeting sometime at your convenience. Okay, let's move on to our next tip. And this is when we're talking about creating polls for a Zoom meeting. I have used polls a little bit, but probably not as much as I should. This is a feature that the host is going to be able to come in and do, and you can either come into an existing scheduled meeting, come in and create a poll. You can create the meeting, the poll as you create the meeting. You can do all of this at the same time. And then lastly, you can actually create a poll on demand during the meeting. So you've got three different options sort of when you can do this. Now, we talk about Zoom meetings and the Zoom fatigue, and Kelly's going to talk more about that and reinforce these points. But a poll can be a really good way to add some interest and interaction within your meeting. Just like if you were teaching in a live setting, have people will raise your hands if you have done and fill in the blank. You can have a maximum of 25 polls for any single meeting. And within each of those polls, you can have a maximum of 10 questions. And each of those questions can either be a single answer or they can be multiple choice. So those are sort of our ground settings that we have for a poll. To come in and to add one, you're going to log into your Zoom account via the web. And you're going in and either create your meeting, or if you have a meeting already created, you can come in and select that meeting, either way. but you're going to go down to the very bottom of the page, and you see within the screen capture here, it's going to have the option for a poll, and it'll be highlighted and underlined. Just make sure that's selected. And then to begin with, you're not going to have anything, so click on that add button. When we come in and we add a poll, you're going to create and make a title for that poll, whatever that you want it to be. I'm asking what's your favorite ice cream flavor. Now there's a checkbox right down below that, and it talks about anonymous. And this checkbox will keep the user information anonymous if that's checked. If not, it's going to attach the username to the answer. And again, only the host is going to be able to see this. Now, this is going to depend what name will appear of how they log into Zoom. I know I see this a lot of times where we tell our staff, you need to log into Zoom and stay logged into Zoom. It's going to have your name, it's going to have your profile picture, all of that kind of stuff. But you'll have other people that have logged in, and if, again, you can allow that to where people can sort of log in anonymous or not with their full name anyway. So again, you need to think about, do you need that information or not? You're going to come in and then type in, well, what is your question? Type that in, and then you're going to select your answers. And again, what type of answers they're going to be, single choice or multiple choice. So you can add that one question. If you want to add an additional question down at the bottom, you have a link to add a question, and it just goes down below that. And you can repeat this again up to 10 questions per poll. When you have your questions for this poll done, you're going to click Save. So when we come in and it's like, all right, we're ready, we're going to have a stopping point here or a little break, and we want to ask you a question. You're going to come down and launch the polls within Zoom. Just look for that polls button. And the first poll is going to appear. And if it's only one poll, it's only going to be one thing there. And you're going to see there's your poll. And down at the bottom of it, you have the blue launch polling icon. You're going to click on it. Now, if multiple polls have been created, you've got more than one poll, you can select from the drop down up at the top, well, which poll is it that you want to launch? So before you click that blue launch polling, make sure you know which poll it's going to be. Now, if your poll has more than one question in it, all of the questions are going to appear from top to bottom. So if you have 3 or 4 questions, you may need to direct your participants is that, hey, there are 4 questions to this poll. We want to make sure that you scroll down and answer all of them. So again, just make sure that you tell people that. As long as this poll is open, participants can see the questions and they make their choice, and they can change their vote as long as that poll is open. So the participant is going to see the questions and the answer choices that they have, and they would make those choices. When you are the person conducting the poll, the host, you're going to see those results as voting occurs. So you'll be able to tell how many people voted and where they voted at. Now, we're not looking at individual answers, but if you know that you have 20 people in your meeting, you may be looking, okay, we should get close to 20 people. Now, has everyone participated? There's also a timer on the screen. So if the host wants to just allow a certain amount of time, that timer is going to be there, and it just increases up in time. It's not a countdown, it counts up. So you as the host, you're going to see your question. see the answers that are being brought in, and then you can say, okay, polling is going to end at 3, 2, 1, and you would click your end polling button down at the bottom of the screen. The host is going to see the results of the poll that you have. You can then come down and you can share those results and let the participants see those. You can also relaunch the poll, and when you relaunch it, it would clear all the answers. So maybe there was some misunderstanding about one of the questions that you have put on. You could offer a better explanation for it, and then you could relaunch that poll. The polling results can be downloaded as a report during and after the meeting. And if you have not marked the box with anonymous, the participant name will be listed with those results on the report that it can be downloaded. But the name of who voted for what cannot be shared with all of the participants. So it's a really neat tool, offers you some of that interaction that we strive to look for within Zoom. Next, looking at breakout rooms. Breakout rooms allow the host to come in and split a Zoom meeting in up to 50 separate sessions. This split can be done manually or automatically, or you can allow the participant to select the breakout room that they want to be in. The host can switch between each of these sessions in the chat, going back and forth within the breakout rooms, but you're going to need to verify with your administrators of Zoom that you have this feature enabled on your account. And again, going back to check your settings for that. In my case, the breakout room is a feature that's locked by our administrators, but it's locked in the on position. Whereas we can come in and use the breakout rooms as the host in any of our Zoom sessions. So this would be something you need to check on your particular Zoom account to see if you have this. And again, just like with polling, breakout rooms is a way to come in and to increase some interaction. Just like if we were doing a live meeting and we're going to break people up into different little subgroups, and you give them a task to do and you give them a time limit to do it in. So the host or the co-host can launch a breakout room when the meeting has started. And you'll see you have those options for creating those. Select how many breakout rooms you want to have, whether you want it to be people to be assigned automatically, manually, or let the participants choose the room. Make that choice and click on the create button down at the bottom. Those rooms are going to be created. They're going to be called room 1, 2, 3, 4. You can come in as the host and you can rename those rooms, or you see that you've got, if people were picking their own, maybe nobody picked room 4. You could come in and just delete it. When you have those rooms and you just take your cursor and highlight over each of those, that will give you the option to come in and rename a room or to delete. The assign, if you have that option turned on, that would be to where you could go in and it's going to open up your list of participants to where you could assign certain participants into a particular room. You do have some room options that you can look at. And I just opened up and captured the screen of what your options are going to look like. Again, choosing the room, allow participants to return to the main session at any time. You know, if they want to jump out of the breakout room and come back to the main, you can allow them to do that or not. How long do you want them to automatically be open? Again, making it a very timed deal to where you have 10 minutes to complete this task. And after that time, those rooms are going to close and it will come back. It also has a countdown timer that you can come in and use. Again, things to make the rooms more interactive. The host or the co-host can come in and they can go to the different rooms, but they can also come in and broadcast the message to all rooms, such as we're going to finish in 5 minutes, and everybody would see that in all the rooms. And then the host can also at any time come in and they can close all of the rooms. That's going to end your breakouts and it'll return everybody back to the main meeting room. So you have a lot of different options, of course, to increase that interaction that we have within the meetings. A couple more things here is one, coming in and using a waiting room. Now, a waiting room allows the host and the co-host to control when participants can join the meeting. And you can either pick people one by one, or you can let them all come in at one time. This comes back into like you're wanting to verify who's coming in. It's going to be one of the tools that we can use to avoid the Zoom bombing that we hear a lot about. And again, in Tennessee, we just got hit with that. I think in this past week, we got a note about that. So it's still going on and it's still very popular. But waiting rooms and the registration are two ways that we can use to help minimize this. The waiting rooms and this verifying the participants, that gets into sometimes, is it going to work depending on who you're inviting, to your Zoom meeting. You can do invited users and allow them to have a choice to bypass the waiting room and go straight in. So there's a lot of different configurations that you can use. And you have to think about, are these people all going to be within your organization, or are these the general public type thing? So you can log into that Zoom account, go in via the web and look at your settings, and then scroll down to the waiting room. And the waiting room feature is something that you have to turn on or off for your account. Then if you do turn it on, there are some options that you will need to come in and select. The first option is that everyone who comes into the meeting will first go into the waiting room. It's real easy. It's an on or off, it's all or none. If you select that, everyone, click continue, you're ready to go. If you come in and you have users that are not within your account, you can have those go to the waiting room, and participants would be that are within your account would go into the meeting. So it's sort of like if you're part of us, you can come in, but if you're not part of us, we're going to screen you first. Then that third option is users not in your account and not part of allowed domains go to a waiting room. And using those domains, in our case, in Tennessee, our domain is tennessee.edu. We could use that. This is the one option. I've not used the third one in order to come in and create a waiting room, but it's here. It's one of those things you may want to explore, and it may work in your situation. You can also come in and customize the waiting room, and you can upload a logo or an image, put in a room description or some information that you're in the waiting room for XX meeting, will be starting at a certain time. You could put that information there. You are limited to 400 characters. But looking at that, the waiting room is a very powerful tool, and it has a lot of information that you can come in and use. It's one of these tips and tools that you would probably want to practice more with it before ready to employ it. My last tip And this is one that I use every time that I host a Zoom meeting. If you have the option to have an extra computer, a tablet, or even a smartphone, use that item and log into your meeting just as a general participant. I turn off the video, I turn off the audio on it, because what I want to do is to be able to see exactly what my participants are seeing. What screens are being shared, is the video playing, etc. We have and go to so many meetings, it's like, okay, I'm sharing my screen. Are you seeing my screen? Are you seeing the right screen? Many times we've been into that. If you have this set up, just over to the side, you can glance at it as you swap out your screen and you can know, yep, everything's right. I'm not having to spend my time to ask and look at those kind of questions. And I'm going to finish up on, when you're looking at help within Zoom, the Zoom Help Center, when you log into your Zoom account, there's a support tab. You can go up there and you can find out basically anything about Zoom that you could ever think about. Very detailed instructions. It's where I go to look for things about Zoom as I'm exploring it. And that's where our university IT group will first send us to with questions about that. So as we've come in and we've covered so much of this technical information, I want to pass this off to my cohort, Kelly, and let her continue and begin to talk about some other tips about Zoom.
Okay, well, thank you, David. That was great information. I know I learned some things in that, so thank you very much. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, can you see that? Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about Zoom fatigue. We certainly all have it right now with all of the meetings that are going on. And I just wanted to talk to you about why that occurs and some things that you can do if you find yourself in back-to-back meetings. And so I'll go over a few tips on, some reasons why those virtual meetings can be so tiring, why they're so taxing on our brains after several in one day. Some coping strategies, things to avoid, and a little bit of Zoom etiquette. And whenever I say Zoom, I really mean any kind of a virtual meeting, whether it be the Zoom platform or WebEx. I've had some meetings via WebEx, and I've also had some meetings via Microsoft Teams. They all pretty much have the same format. So the things I'm going to tell you today are kind of general for all of those types of meetings. Okay, well, virtual meetings require more mental focus than face-to-face meetings. We have to try a little harder to concentrate, to hear and see what the speaker's trying to portray. And after a certain amount of time, that starts to take a toll on you. And it just requires you to, or it just kind of makes you mentally tired after a period of time. It requires you to stare at the screen for a long period of time. And that's whether your camera is on or off. You just kind of feel obligated to stare at the screen for an hour or sometimes more than that. And you don't get a mental break from that as you would in a face-to-face meeting or class. Not only can that be kind of just tiring for your mind, it can lead to eye strain as well. And this is something that I suffer with if I'm on the computer all day, whether it being in a meeting or just trying to get some work done. I find that when I stare at my screen all day, I don't blink as much and my contacts dry out, or if I'm wearing my glasses, my eyes dry out and my eyes start to really feel strained. So just be aware of that and take breaks if at all possible to prevent that from happening. Now, one thing that happens during virtual meetings is that people's backgrounds can be very distracting. So while preparing for this presentation today, this was one of the top things that I came back to over and over again was the research that's been done on how distracting people's backgrounds can be during meetings. Now, the picture that we see here is, well, that would be the ideal Zoom meeting. Everybody's backgrounds are very simple. Everybody has the same camera angle, but we all know that's not the reality. And my background here is the perfect example. I'm in my office today, and for those of us in agriculture or horticulture, we tend to collect a lot of things, and our office sometimes looks like this. So my background can be very distracting for people, and it can be the same at home as well. People are too busy kind of looking at your background to see what you have and not paying attention to the meeting. And this is the case with virtual backgrounds as well. There are a lot of interesting virtual backgrounds that people can choose. Some of them are pretty clever, but those can be distracting as well. So ideally, we want to have just a simple background and a uniform camera angle if at all possible. So this was another thing that I found interesting when preparing for this is that people sit and stare at their own reflection during meetings if their camera is on. They can't help it. They've never seen themselves from that type of angle before. They don't know what they look like when they present or when they're sitting in a meeting, and they just start to gaze at their own face. And for some people, this is more of an issue than others. And if you find yourself doing that and not being able to focus on the speaker, there is an option to hide the self view, and that can kind of hide your own reflection and help you to focus more on the speaker. So sometimes if we have lots and lots of meetings, it can just be exhausting. I know when COVID first hit about this time last year and we all went to working from home, we would often have back-to-back meetings all day long. And it was exhausting. At the end of the day, everyone was just mentally exhausted. We were trying to scramble to go to virtual formats for both meetings and classes, and there was just a lot going on, and it just got to the point where it was exhausting. We would have 7 or 8 meetings a day, and it was just too much. Now, certainly it's not that much of a case now. There's still a lot of virtual meetings, but not as many as there was this time last year. And that's kind of the reality of Zoom, though, or any kind of virtual meeting, is it's hard to unplug from work. You know, you can connect to Zoom meetings from your cell phone, sometimes from your car, and they can be done anywhere at any time. You can do it if you're taking a walk. You can connect to a Zoom meeting while you're driving down the road, if you're at home, if you're at work. It's almost like you cannot unplug from work. There's always the option to connect from a meeting. Um, and then it's difficult to relax when you get home. And this actually happened to me last night. I got home from the office about 4. I had a 6 o'clock virtual meeting. So rather than using that 2-hour time frame to unwind and relax from my day in the office, I was thinking about my meeting at 6 o'clock. We have had some internet router issues in my home. So I was worried about if my internet was going to work. And it just, by the time that meeting was over, I was just exhausted. Not only was it a 12-hour work day or more, but you don't get a chance to relax and unwind from work. And then I'm sure you all know this, but if you have a family, if you have kids and a husband and dogs, it's hard to get everyone to be quiet while you're trying to do a meeting from home. you know, they just don't understand how easily it is to pick up background noise in a meeting. And you feel bad about having to ask everyone to be quiet, especially all the time. And it can just be kind of taxing. And I, for
Ellie,
one, yes.
you're in presenter mode. Can you, we're seeing your next slide as well as your note box.
Okay.
Can you, since you're talking about interruptions, I thought I'd just interrupt you.
That's okay. That's okay. Let me figure out how to do this here. Let me stop share and try this. Okay. And this is a short presentation, so I promise I'm not going to keep you for much longer. Let's see.
That fixed it. Well, no, kind of.
All right, let's try one more thing here. Well, I don't know, Scott. I don't know if that's going to fix it or not. I've been having some computer issues, and I think that's what the problem is. Okay. Well, I may just have to continue as I was. Sorry about that.
That's it.
Is that better?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. All right. Okay, I apologize. My computer has been acting kind of weird the last few days, so I apologize for that. So, okay, another thing that I discovered while preparing for this presentation is that you want to avoid multitasking. And Scott, can you see the multitasking screen right now?
I'm seeing Zoom exhaustion.
You should be able to click on the slide and then press the arrow down. And it should swap over to the next slide.
Oh boy. Well. All right. Well, I apologize, everyone. I don't know why it's doing this. Okay. Scott, what are you seeing right now, or David?
Your Zoom presentation screen.
Okay. Does it say avoid multitasking?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to have to finish it out like this. I don't know why it's doing this. So technology can always be a challenge. So always have a plan B. Okay, so while preparing for this presentation, avoiding multitasking was one of the biggest tips that it gave for being able to focus in a meeting. If your camera is on, the presenter can tell if you're working on email or looking at your phone, that sort of thing. And plus, if you are doing other things while you're trying to focus on a meeting, it's just very difficult to do. As we talked in the beginning, it's hard to focus on a Zoom meeting. So if you're trying to do two things at once, it's very difficult. Now, some people may not have any trouble with this, but for others, it may be quite an issue. Don't forget to moderate or have a moderator. The moderator, and this is also true for in-person meetings as well. I am a big proponent of starting meetings on time and ending meetings on time, whether it's in person or virtual. And I usually have several positive comments in my post-class evaluations because people appreciate this. They want to start on time and they want to end on time. And having a moderator will make sure that that happens. If you're trying to teach and moderate at the same time, or lead a meeting and moderate, sometimes it's easy to get off track. So the moderator is there to keep the meeting moving along, to let the speaker know if they're having some kind of technical issues, which Scott and David have been helping me with here, because sometimes we don't know. So it's good to have another person to do that. And if you get someone that is asking a question and it's just becoming a little long-winded, they can help shorten that up a little bit. The moderator can remind people to turn off cameras and microphones, which is a huge distraction if someone's microphone especially is on and they don't know it. The moderator can help to keep small talk to a minimum. And again, just keeping the meeting or class going on time. So things you want to avoid during a virtual meeting or class. Don't forget professionalism. You know, we're connecting to these meetings and classes from our homes a lot of times, sometimes even from our bedrooms. I know that's where I have to do my computer work is from home, is in the bedroom. And it's easy to forget that it's a professional meeting or a professional class. So keep that in mind. Don't get too relaxed, even with a virtual format. And get dressed, comb your hair. This is, you know, in the last year with the multiple meetings that we have virtually with some of our colleagues, it amazes me that, you know, some people looks like they literally just rolled out of bed, and it's just kind of a little bit distracting and not very professional. And I'm not saying that you have to get dressed to the nines like you would if you were going to the office or teaching or being in a meeting in person, but, you know, just keep in mind that people can see you better than you may realize. Mute yourself when you're not speaking. Don't forget you're on the camera. I have had a lot of complaints in some of my virtual classes from attendees that didn't know their camera was on, and they got up and they started walking around and their camera was pointed to the ceiling, and it just became very distracting for other people on that meeting. Don't eat. Eating can be very noisy, even if you well, a lot of times people forget their microphones on and they're eating lunch or something like that. And it's both visually and the sound is not something that everybody else wants to hear. Don't keep your camera at a weird angle. We don't want to look up anyone's nose, so be aware of that. And sit still during the meeting. Don't be up moving around. And some of these things just comes with practice. The more meetings you're in, the more you realize what to do and what not to do. Have a clean, work appropriate background. Don't interrupt the speaker, raise your hand, and always put or never put a private message in the group chat. I have had this happen on several meetings or classes where someone thought they were sending a private message to someone, and it ended up going to the whole group. Now, it wasn't anything bad, but they just didn't realize that. So be aware of that as well. Now, we don't have to have, not every meeting has to be virtual. I am a really big proponent of working in Microsoft Teams, especially if you're doing a project or a grant proposal, rather than having a virtual meeting where it just seems like you don't get a lot accomplished. Have the document in something like Microsoft Teams. Everyone on the team can go in and work on their part of it. You can see what they did. You can send messages to people on your team. And it really helps to work on a project without sitting through another virtual meeting. And a lot of things can be handled by email. They can be handled by email. That is a big one with me. There's no reason to have an email or a meeting if you can just email some talking points to someone, or pick up the phone and have a video call or something like that. Now, something that we like to do here in my extension office is we have a lot of walk and talk meetings. So my office is, I'm fortunate enough that I'm located in a beautiful botanical garden. So we have trails all over the park. And me and office mates have a lot of walk and talk meetings where we can get outside, we can socially distance, we can talk about, you know, office financials or whatever else is going on. And it's just a great way to have meetings, get a little bit of exercise, and get away from your computer. Have an agenda. Have an agenda. This is very important for meetings. Have an agenda, stick to it, and try to accomplish everything that you want to accomplish within 30 minutes to an hour. And sometimes that's tough to do, but there has been a lot of research shown that adults have a maximum attention span in meetings of about 1 hour. And I know we're reaching that in this meeting, so everybody's probably thinking about lunch or what else they have to do for the day. But just, you know, keep this in mind, have an agenda, stick to it so that you can keep people's attention. And this is just a little tip that I like to use, and it is called the speaker mode. And so the speaker mode is when the speaker of the meeting, their picture appears larger than everyone else's. And this is, you know, in an educational presentation like this, it's not really something that we can do. But if you're just having a meeting where someone is not presenting, this can help to keep people's attention on the speaker throughout the meeting. And it also works well for educational programs where you don't have a PowerPoint, where you just want to show examples of something. The speaker's picture will come up larger, and then the participants can better see what they're trying to show. And then last but not least, protect your precious time. This is one of the biggest lessons that I have learned in my 7 years with Extension. There are only so many hours in the day. Our time is precious. So, you know, try your best to avoid overscheduling yourselves. And if I understand that that is not easy to do, but have a little bit of time each day to what I call deep work, whether it just be strategic thinking about upcoming programs, or maybe you need to just do some concentration on some writing, or any kind of a work project. I find that I am most clear-minded first thing in the morning. So if I have a project where I need to really think about something and focus my brain power on that, I do it first thing in the morning. And, you know, set aside some time for yourself each day, if possible, to do that. And I like to have a meeting-free day each week. Now, this is not always possible, but Fridays are typically my breath-catching days. I have 3 large volunteer organizations. There are a lot of logistics and emails and phone calls that go along with that. And so I try to set aside Fridays of every week to catch up on emails and catch up on phone calls and not have to focus on meetings. So try to preserve some of your time so that you can get more done and you won't sit in a meeting stressing about other things that need to happen. So hopefully you got a few tips out of that. And with that, we will open it up for questions or tips that you might like to share with the group. And again, sorry about my technical issues.
And Kelly, we have some questions that have come in. I've answered the one so far in chat, and then I had one texted to me by one of my coworkers I wanted to share. Let me start with the one that got texted because it's not captured within the chat. And Kevin had asked on our polling results, well, how do you get those? How do those become downloaded? And just checking with Zoom, you have to go into the web portal and log in, and then you will select reports. And then from reports, you're going to select what type of report. It can be the registration report if you had that turned on, or your poll report. And then from that point, you can come in and actually download that. So the poll reporting for the host, that's all going to be through the web browser that you'll get. So that was the one we didn't capture. We had a question about, can the host and the co-host both record a meeting, just in case you have technical issues. And again, checking with Zoom, it's really the first person who hits record is who will get to record the meeting. So that could be either a host or a co-host. Ashley is asking about thinking about bandwidth and rural internet. Is it better to record to the host computer or record to the cloud? And again, connections and speakers and all that. I guess I look at it in thinking whoever of your team is going to have the best bandwidth may be the one that should be the recorder of the meeting. And again, you can make any person within the group a co-host of the meeting, then they would have the power to record. And then we had a question about talking about the difference between a Zoom meeting and a Zoom webinar. And again, today we're using a webinar, a little bit different. The main difference is with a webinar is that all participants have their microphone and their camera turned off. And the participants are going to use the Q&A or the chat feature, if that's enabled, to communicate with the presenters. A webinar will handle more people. That's one advantage to it. But I look at it too, is that a webinar also is a lot of times more one-way communication with, it's the presenters talking to the participants in the meeting. And that interaction isn't quite the same. And Kelly, you may want to jump in some more on that one.
Yeah, I think it's just what you said. It's more puts more of the focus on the presenter, and there's less distractions with audience that may have their camera or microphone turned on. So there could be some benefits to that either way.
Yeah. And the webinar too is a different license. I know in our situation, I don't have a webinar license, but I can request one. And it's basically like going to the library to check it out. I get to check it out for so many days. And then I can host my webinar. And then when that time period's over, they take the license back from me and they distribute it to somebody else. And again, every institution is going to be a little bit different on that. But I mean, you can actually go out and you can purchase a webinar license if you wanted to. Do we have any other questions or comments to come in? You can go to the Q&A and put those in there. Well, if not, we appreciate you participating and attending today. I hope you got at least just one or two things out of today's meeting that you can go back in and use as you're being the host and conducting meetings. Again, Scott is recording this and he will be posting this on through YouTube and be sending a link out to this through NACAA. So we'll look forward to seeing that. If you need to come back and see a refresher or catch on any of the things that we talked about in particular. Kelly, what kind of final words do you have for us?
Well, like I just said, take some time for yourself and try not to overschedule yourself with meetings if at all possible. We all need some downtime.
I'll agree. Well, thank everybody. We appreciate you, and the Teaching and Educational Technology Committee appreciates sharing this information with you today. We're having another session that our committee is doing in a couple of weeks, and that's going to be more on the video editing. And Kevin's asking how many folks were online, and I think I had looked and saw we had a total of 47 today. Scott said we had 89 pre-registered. Okay, anything else? Again, thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to having you in a couple of weeks at the next TE&T meeting. Thanks.